Welcome, football fans, to Saturday Showdown, the ultimate touchdown for your college football fix. Each week, we'll dive into the hottest games, standout players, and pivotal moments that define the season. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just tuning in for the first time, we got all the stats, stories, and insights to keep you at the top of your game. So grab your favorite snack and get comfy. It's time to kick off another episode of Saturday Showdown.
We are back once again, college football fans, to recap another wild Week 7 in college football, where you had some big top 25 matchups, several injuries that we'll discuss here in a minute, and a lot of good games to go around for another great weekend of college football. And we'll dive right in with starting with some injury news. A decent amount of kind of key players injured this weekend. The first one is Florida's quarterback, Graham Mertz. They've been running the two-quarterback system with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. Well, for the rest of the season, it's going to be DJ Lagway, as in Saturday against Tennessee, Graham Mertz tore his ACL and will be out the remainder of the season. And I think he's out of eligibility as well. So, he finished up his, last season at Florida due to an injury. So,
yeah, I mean, that's detrimental to Florida, but I would say that the quarterback play is going to be a little more consistent. And I don't want to make that sound bad, but Mertz he's got a lot of good talent, but he's just, he might be the most inconsistent, or if not one of the most inconsistent quarterbacks in college football. So hopefully as a speedy recovery. It always sucks when you tear your ACL, especially when you're trying to, he's probably good enough to get drafted somewhere in the NFL. So that just, it sucks when you're a kid like that who's got all the talent and you have a severe injury like that, because those could be life-changing. So, hopefully he comes back from that and it's not, one of those ACL tears that completely changes you as a player. Hopefully he's able to recover very quickly from that.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of people viewed this offense and these two quarterbacks as Graham Mertz was the guy that offered you a higher floor, whereas you look at DJ Lagway, who offers you a higher ceiling in terms of talent and what you can, get out of them. It'll be interesting to see what Florida looks like the rest of the season, especially Napier coaching for his job and having to rely on the true freshman. So that's going to be key to how fast can Lagway develop into a consistent quarterback throughout the rest of this college football season. In that same game, you also had Tennessee linebacker Keenan Pili will miss the remainder of the season with a torn ACL as well. So 2 ACL tears in that game at Tennessee in Neyland Stadium. Another starting linebacker, that's going to be tough for that Tennessee defense, who seemed to struggle a little bit this week. They got the win at home, but seemed to struggle more than what a lot of people thought they would have.
Yeah, again, another detrimental injury to a kid who probably is going to have some pretty decent draft stock on a defense that was pretty solid. So that really hurts Tennessee big time. They're lucky they were able to come away with the win in that game. They didn't play very well, but it sucks that another young man of that caliber has now got a torn ACL and going to be out for the remainder of the season. So best wishes to him. Hopefully he recovers quickly. It just always sucks to see like that, and hopefully Tennessee takes it well, because a big part of their defense, and they haven't been playing well as of late. So hopefully this doesn't put too much depression on that team. They can come back from that, because they really lately have not been playing well. So
yeah. Continuing on, Marcus Freeman of Notre Dame announced that their star defensive back Benjamin Morrison, he is out for the rest of the season due to a hip injury. Not really specified there, but he was one of the key pieces in that secondary for Notre Dame, as they're making a push towards working back to that top 12 and a college football playoff spot. So, he's going to be another guy that's missed. Like we just said about these other guys, you hate to see, these student athletes' seasons cut short due to injury, and hopefully it's a speedy recovery. But, that's going to be big time for that Notre Dame defense, especially they can't afford any more hiccups in their season if they hope to make the college football playoffs.
Yeah, and to lose someone of that caliber, I mean, especially when you still have some of the hardest games of your season left on your schedule, I mean that just sucks, because like you just said yourself, Caleb, they really can't afford to have another hiccup or another bump in the road. They're lucky to be number 12 now, so we'll see what happens. But to lose a key, the biggest defensive piece on your team, that's very detrimental. So we'll have to see how it affects them overall because they still have a rough schedule ahead. So
Yeah. We continue on here. Utah's Cam Rising, the guy that's been around college football for 7 years already. He's going to be out indefinitely due to a lower leg injury for the rest of the season. He's a guy that they haven't considered it, but it is an option for him, is that he could be eligible for an 8th season of college football through a medical red shirt. Dylan and I was just talking about this before we jumped on here. Is he a guy that is, extremely loyal to Utah, wants to stick around and finish his career there, or kind of takes that medical red shirt and looks for an option to go somewhere and play one more year somewhere else, whether that be, a potential contending team, that maybe is missing the key piece as the quarterback will take him, or if he just wants to go somewhere and just play out, his 8th season of college football. And I mean, you always want to win as an athlete, but it depends on who all reaches out if he decides to go that route, or he may decide to return to Utah. We don't know yet because their coach Kyle Whittingham said that's something that they have to consider. Not sure if he's even considered it, but it's a possibility that they've talked about that he could look at as an option to get another year of college football.
Yeah, a lot comes into play in that, but if I'm Cam Rising, I mean, I think I've given enough to Utah, and if I decide to come back and play another year, I'm definitely going to make sure I can go to a place where I can start and I have a good opportunity to at least make a run into national championship. Obviously, that's what the goal is. And no offense to Utah, even though they are a good team, they're just very inconsistent. They lose to the really bad teams and beat the really good teams. And with 12 teams getting in now, that might give you a chance to get in. But let's be realistic. I think everybody knows that Utah is not going to win a national championship anytime soon. So, I mean, it's really up to him. I think if I'm trying to improve my draft stock and trying to win a title, I think I have to piece out to Utah and go somewhere that gives me a good opportunity to do that. So,
yeah, I agree there. And the other injury that we don't have a ton of news on, that I'm sure they're playing it close to the vest, is Colorado's Travis Hunter. He exited that game against Kansas State, and was clearly in a lot of pain with his right shoulder. They said that he was in so much pain he had to use his left hand to undo the right side of his chin strap for his helmet. So there's been no reports right now. I'm sure they're kind of trying to figure out what it is, but that could be detrimental to Colorado if he has to miss a significant amount of time.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting injury to watch out for because, like you just said, very detrimental to Colorado as a whole, considering it is Travis Hunter who is second in the Heisman voting because he's doing something that nobody else does, and not only playing both sides of the ball, but playing them both very efficiently. So, like you said, I'm sure they're going to keep it hush-hush just in case it's just like a sore AC joint or something along those lines, because you don't want to ruin the kid's Heisman stock and or draft stock. But if it is serious, that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on, because that's just, it is Travis Hunter. So it'll be interesting to see how hush-hush they keep it and what kind of injury it does come out to be whenever it does come out. So hopefully it's nothing too terrible, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Exactly. And so we'll dive into week 7 here. Is the first game, the really big upset of the week you have to consider is that Utah team we was talking about. They get upset by Arizona State 27-19. Arizona State moves to 5-1 on the season. Utah falls to 4-2. But in this game, I mean, it was not Cam Rising's day. 16 of 37, 209 yards, and 3 picks.
Yep, and we talk about it all the time. And whoever has the most turnovers, I would say about 99% of the time, you lose the game. So veteran quarterback like that, obviously just having some issues, throwing 3 picks. Their defense didn't play very well either to give up 27 points to Arizona State. Not the greatest thing that you could possibly be doing. But yeah, I mean, no surprise there. Like I said earlier, Utah's one of those teams they're a good team, but they're probably one of the most inconsistent teams. It's the type of team that can beat a ranked USC team, 2 to 3 times in a season, with the best quarterback in college, at the time last year with Caleb Williams. Every time they faced USC, they absolutely plowed them into the dirt. And then they face a team like this, Arizona State, who is 5-1, but not ranked, and then they lose to them on all fronts. So it really is no surprise that that they lose a game like this.
I was about to say the star of the show for this Arizona State team this game was, their running back, Cam Scatabo, 22 carries, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 7.2 yards a carry in this game. I mean, it sounds like the game we were talking about a few weeks ago with Michigan, they just kind of turned around and handed off, and that was the game plan. Utah was not stopping the run here, so, why not continue to feed this running back that's having a lot of success?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they didn't fix anything. They literally, like you said, they just turn around, hand the ball off. Easy day for the QB. Just turn around, hand the ball. So, but no surprise that Utah loses a game like this. It's unfortunate because they're always around, but they always have that one hiccup, man, and it just ruins everything. And then after that one, they just have multiple throughout the year. So,
yeah. Up next, we'll talk about the Boise State game, not because it was a great game, but to give you your weekly Ashton Jeanty update. Boise State wins 28-7 over Hawaii. Only 1 touchdown this game, but he carries the ball 31 times for 217 yards in this game. I mean, he's just continuing to build that resume higher and higher and cementing himself in the lead for that Heisman contention.
Yeah, I mean, he's number 1 in the Heisman voting by far. Doesn't matter that Boise State's not even a terrible team now, but they are playing terrible teams. So, I mean, if someone wants to say that's the only reason why he's doing it, I can't knock him for saying it. It is what it is. But the fact that he's doing it consistently to every team, I mean, it's not like he's picking and choosing, like having 50 yards against Oregon and then 300 yards against another team. Like, he's doing it to every team that he plays. But I want to get to this. Last week we had talked about it, and we were trying to figure out, like, guesstimate kind of like what he would end up with if he kept on the same pace. Well, the wonderful folks from DraftKings did that for us, thank God. The one thing that I did not know is Barry Sanders actually still holds the rushing record for college football in a season, which I did not know. Barry Sanders had 344 carries for 2,628 rushing yards and 37 touchdowns. This is a 1988. So that's how good Barry Sanders was. I just want to say, first off, the fact that that's a 1998 or 1988 stat, and he still holds it to this day. But Ashton Jeanty's full season pace right now, if he was to continue doing what he's doing to every team, which I have no reason to believe that he's not going to, he would have 294 carries on the season, so significantly less amount of carries than Barry Sanders. And he would end up with 2,912 yards and 38 rushing touchdowns. That's absolutely absurd. He has a significant amount less carries, significantly less carries than Barry Sanders, and he's going to have almost 300 yards more than him. And that's just if he stays on the same pace. That's not saying if he has like 3 more games like he just did to Hawaii and have 217 yards rushing. I mean, we're potentially talking a 3,000-yard season in college football for a running back if he could just keep the pace that he's keeping, and 38 rushing touchdowns. That is not right. That's not normal for a person to do. I just want to let you guys know that. But I will say, if Ashton Jeanty, if he does break this record, I would imagine it's not going to get broken for a very long time. 2,900 yards. And that, not counting if he goes any higher, just 2,900 yards is rushing yards. That's an absurd amount for one person to have. by himself all season long. That just means you're a freaking animal.
I think it's safe to say you're watching a generational talent right now with what he's doing. And I mean, if you look at the rest of Boise State's schedule, I don't see why he can't continue this. They've got their probably toughest game they have left is UNLV this week.
And that's it.
And then you've got San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose State, Wyoming, and then finish the season out with Oregon State.
Yeah. So unless he has some sort of injury or something, I would imagine he's going to do this. I mean, if I was a betting man, I would say it's safe to bet that he's at least going to put up 150 yards on every team that he goes against.
I was about to say, if you look at it, UNLV is second in the Mountain West behind Boise State, and they're 5-1 as well. San Diego State is 3-3. Nevada is 3-4. San Jose State's 4-2. Wyoming is 1-5. And so, I mean, you got Oregon State at 4-2. So, probably UNLV and Oregon State's the toughest two games they have left. And like you said, if he can do this type of damage against like a team like Oregon, I don't see why he won't be able to do this against, a UNLV or an Oregon State.
Yeah, and the only thing that Hawaii has to be grateful about is that he didn't rush for like 8 touchdowns. He had one, right? He had one rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're lucky he didn't do more. They're lucky he didn't score more, to be honest. Which is pretty crazy to have 217 yards and only 1 touchdown. But yeah, I don't. All I know is he's like on all the betting sites, he is 1,000,000% the favorite to win the Heisman. So yeah, credit to him because the kid's just like Caleb said earlier, the best way I can describe it, he's a generational talent. I mean, you're literally watching something that might not ever get done again. I mean, it's taken from 1988 till now for us to see something like this. So
I was about to say, and on top of putting himself up to the top of the Heisman list, he's also setting himself up to get a nice little paycheck and be drafted pretty high, I feel like, in this upcoming NFL draft. I mean, you look at a running back like this, who wouldn't want a guy like this? Yes, he's a little bit probably on the smaller side, probably the big question mark going into that is, would he be able to continue this type of success at that next level? I mean, right now, I don't see why not. I mean, if you see some other smaller running backs have success in the league, he kind of gives me Jahmyr Gibbs type vibes, like as far as size-wise build comparison, guys like that you see he's having plenty of success with the Lions right now.
Yeah, and the good thing about Jonty is that you can't guesstimate what he's going to do in the NFL. You can only imagine he's going to keep doing what he's doing now. I mean, obviously, I think we know in the NFL you're not going to rush for 217 yards on every team. That's just never going to happen. But you can't say that the kid won't, kind of run the same way he's running against NFL teams that that he's doing right now. You just can't say that. But the good thing about him is we've had a lot of small running backs in the NFL. People like Darren Sproles, who was absolutely phenomenal, more in the passing game than rushing. But he did have a lot of rushing talent. Mark Ingram, who was an absolute animal for not only for the Ravens when he played for them a little bit, but more so for the Saints when he played with them. I mean, the guy was an animal. So we have had small running backs that do a really good job in the NFL. I mean, when I look at Ashon Jonty, I kind of see a lot of David Montgomery type of feel, like a dude who's not the biggest, but just runs north-south, puts his shoulder down, and not afraid to carry a couple guys with him. So, I mean, credit to him. This kid's, like Caleb said, we're literally watching something that might not ever happen again. So
I was about to say, I think the thing that gets me the most is if you watch any of these Boise State games, is how the man just stands in the backfield and stares the defense down. Doesn't even get in a running back type stance. He just stands straight up.
Just straight up.
And just stares down that defense. Could you imagine how intimidating that is to be a defense and you just see that man just standing there staring you down, planning what he's going to do.
Yeah, it'd be like watching Michael Myers just like standing, like just menacingly, in the backfield, like knowing like he's looking at you like, you guys know I'm getting the ball. We're not even trying to hide it, and there's nothing you're gonna do. There's nothing you're gonna do to stop me. And teams know, like they don't even try to hide the run. Like they literally just turn around. Madsen literally just turns around and hands him the ball. Like they don't try to hide the run at all. And the man gets it. He doesn't try to break to the outside. He literally just runs directly through you. And then if you hold on to him, you're gonna get dragged. I mean, I'm sorry to say. So yeah, it's been real. I'm not a huge Boise State fan, but I am this year. It is very fun to watch the kid. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch this last game because I can't watch Hawaii play. That's like watching a grade school team play football. I mean,
it also kicked off at 10 p.m. as well. So
it's just been really fun to watch the kid. It's been really fun to watch the team. A lot of people picked him as a sleeper to sneak in the college playoffs. And I will say, I think that this is a team that if they did make it to the 12th spot, they could give a lot of teams a run for their money because a lot of these higher up teams do not have quality rushing game, like quality rushing defense. So you put a guy like this up against like an Alabama who's getting torched by Vanderbilt and South Carolina, it'd be very interesting to see what a kid like this could do against some of these higher up teams. So credit to him and Boise State, man, because they're putting on a show for everybody to enjoy.
I was about to say, well, Boise State will have a much anticipated bye week this week before they get back playing against UNLV 2 weeks from now. So no Genty this week. So man gets a well-deserved rest after a hot start to this college football season where he's over 1,200 yards rushing on the season with 17 touchdowns. I'm excited to see what he does the rest of the season as we continue here. Another one of the bigger games inside the top 10 is you had Penn State going on the road, managing to get the win over USC in overtime, 33-30. Drew Aller comes in this game, doesn't have his best game, 30 of 43, 391 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. It's like we always talk about, though, those turnovers, those interceptions are going to cost you. On the other side of the ball, Miller Moss, 220 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I think the big game changer in this game, Tyler Warren for Penn State, 17 receptions, 224 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Yeah. I'm not going to go back on my word from last week and say that Penn State's not a better team. They are, but they're still the same old Penn State in some ways because I'm not saying that USC is bad. I mean, USC started off as ranked, but they've had a lot of issues on the coaching side and just playing. But Penn State being the number 4 ranked team at the time, I believe, number 4 ranked team at the time. I mean, this is a game that I'm not saying you should go out and blow them out of the water, but you should definitely be able to hold your own. And USC was just handing it to them. I mean, they really were. And Penn State got lucky on a couple plays that allowed them to stay in the game. And they're lucky that they were able to keep, take the game to overtime and win. But they still got to play Ohio State next week. So, I mean, if they play like this against those guys, I know Ohio State lost, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But they played Oregon really well, and if they played the same way they played Oregon against Penn State, I mean, it's not going to be a pretty game for Penn State whatsoever. So I don't know what they need to figure out, but they should figure something out because they are very lucky to come away with a win against an unranked USC team. Because I mean, and if they would have lost, it would have sent them down the ladder. I mean, it really would have dropped them down the ladder because there's a lot of teams knocking on the door that want to be in. So
100%. And I think this also, if you look at it on the flip side for USC, it just kind of emphasizes what we know about Lincoln Riley and that they don't care about defense, because if you're a defensive coordinator, how do you let one singular receiver for the other team have 17 receptions and then the next highest receptions be 4? Like, how can you not double a guy to keep him from not saying this guy is not talented enough to, get those off doubles, but like there's got to be something you can do to slow somebody down to where they don't have 17 receptions and 200 yards by themselves.
Yeah, and as an offense too, whenever their guy throws 3 picks, I mean, you have to capitalize on all those turnovers. I mean, you have to, especially if you're trying to win a football game. But yeah, I agree. 17 receptions over 200 yards. It's almost like the teams that lost to Michigan when they're just running the ball. Like, if you can just stop that kid, you probably win the football game. I mean, he only had 1 touchdown, but you gotta think of all the big time receptions that he had, for the first downs or crucial plays or whatever. I mean, they're looking his direction. And for the next guy to have 13 less than him, the next closest guy to have 13 receptions less than what he had, I mean, credit to US or Penn State pulling it out, but USC, I feel like they dropped the ball on this one. I feel like this is a game that they definitely could have walked away with.
If you look at the points they got off those interceptions, the first one, field goal. The second one, another field goal. That third one, missed field goal. So off 3 interceptions, they came away with 6 points. If you're going to capitalize and win games, you have to get 14 to 17 points at least off those 3 turnovers. You'd like to see it be 21, but I mean, it's like we said, typical Lincoln Riley team, all offense, no defense, and that's not going to get him far. So,
nope, not at all.
As you continue on to some of the big matchups in Week 7, you had the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma, and this game wasn't even close. For it to be a rivalry game, Texas just comes out and does their thing. Quinn Ewers' first game back since being injured. They roll 34-3. Ewers a little rusty, 199 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, nothing spectacular. They relied on the run game here, 118 yards by Quintrivian Wisner, 118 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, this was a game where Texas just dominated the entire game, and it looks like it's troubling times for Oklahoma, especially when you look at their quarterback situation. You had Michael Hawkins, who replaced Jackson Arnold against Tennessee, 20 of 27. Sorry, 19 of 30, 148 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 20 carries for 27 yards, 1.4 yards a carry. This Oklahoma team has no offense whatsoever. Yep. And apparently no defense either.
Yeah, they have no QB whatsoever. And, it's disappointing because a year ago, they beat Texas a year ago. I mean, they had Dillon Gabriel, so they actually had a quarterback who was competent enough to play football. But, I mean, they just don't have a QB. And, when you don't have a guy who can lead your team and make the plays when you need them, I mean, it just trickles down. It just trickles down the ladder. You don't have a QB, your run game can't get going. If you don't have a pass game, I say it all the time, with the NFL. If you don't have a pass game, your run game's not going to get going, and vice versa. If you don't have a run game, your pass game's probably not going to get going. And then, your defense can only, they're human, right? They can only stay on the field for so long before they start getting tired of everything. So it just trickles down the ladder. And Quinn Ewers, he did look a little rusty, but he prevailed. I did say last week that I thought it was going to be a good game, but I did say don't be surprised if it does get out of hand. And unfortunately for Oklahoma, it got out of hand. And, that's kind of sad to see. You hate seeing games like that where it's just an absolute, smacking, because that's a big game for the year, especially for college football fans. I mean, that's always an intense, high-level intensity, type of game, and it just wasn't. It was literally just an obliteration on all fronts by Texas. So it sucks to see, but Texas is also the best team in college football, so they're powerhousing through everybody.
Yeah, 100%. as we can stay in the SEC, you had Ole Miss headed down to Baton Rouge to Death Valley to take on LSU, and LSU gets the win here in overtime, 29-26. Jackson Dart, 284 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Garrett Nussmeier for LSU, 337 yards, threw the ball 51 times, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They rely on this passing game immensely. Their lead running back, 12 carries, 37 yards. Their other running back, 9 carries, 34 yards. No touchdowns there. So a team that relies on the pass game. And, it's like we've talked about with the whole game planning thing. They're just good enough that their run game was able to get it done just enough to open up the pass game to let them be successful here. And you saw Ole Miss throwing out all types of different looks, blitzes, types of pressure on Nussmeier, and him just standing in the pocket and clearly throwing the ball 51 times. That is a ton. But having less than 50% accuracy, that would be my only concern.
Yeah, and listen, both teams didn't play well, but LSU's defense just did enough. It's very detrimental that when you're Ole Miss and you get the ball first to score, and you go down in overtime and you come away with a field goal, especially when you're Jackson Dart. You're a kid who, everyone has high up on a draft board. People had high in their Heisman race. That's depressing for your guys' offense to come away like that. And I knew watching that game, I knew that when Ole Miss kicked the field goal, with the way the momentum had swung, I knew it was basically over. I'm sure Ole Miss knew it was over. I mean, you could just feel it in the air. But the big deciding factor that I could see between Ole Miss and LSU, they were very, very undisciplined on offense and on defense. You're talking 12 penalties for 110 yards by Ole Miss. So you're talking a lot of drives that got extended for LSU's offense and a lot of drives that got set back for Ole Miss's offense because of how undisciplined they were on both sides of the ball. So if you want to win, you got to be disciplined, and you can't have a bunch of turnovers, which they had 2 of them. So,
yeah, I agree that will kill you in the end with, you're just shooting yourself in the foot with those penalties, especially, when you have those undisciplined ones like false starts, illegal motions, illegal shifts, things like that. That's, what's going to kill you. So it'll be interesting to see where Ole Miss goes from here, where they bounce back to. They're a team that, had high hopes for, the college football playoffs. That they were a team that going into the season they thought would be near the top of the SEC, vying for one of those college football playoff spots. And the rest of their season doesn't necessarily get easier. They still have to play Georgia, which Georgia's questionable right now.
Yeah.
It seems like after that loss to Alabama, they're struggling to, I want to say, find themselves or get back to Georgia football. They struggled this week. They barely got the win over Mississippi State, a team that we've talked about how bad they've been this season. They let them put up 31 points. They got the win 41-31, and we'll preview it here in a little bit, but if they don't get things together, it could get ugly in Austin this weekend. But we'll go ahead and talk to probably one of the biggest games this weekend. The Oregon Ducks taking down your Ohio State Buckeyes in a game that was close right down to the end. And if it wasn't bad quarterback management right there at the end, you probably have a chance to kick a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, listen, I was blaming Will Howard instantaneously at the moment we lost. I was definitely saying some words that I'm not going to say on here. I was very upset, but there was more to it. I'm not going to blame Will Howard completely. I am going to blame him, but it's not completely. Whenever Oregon had 12 men on the field, and they got a penalty, but allowed the clock to run. We only had one timeout, But Ryan Day was very capable enough to take that timeout, and he didn't do it. And that wasted like 15 to 17 seconds off the clock instantly. And we were down to 6 seconds. So even though there was a penalty, I mean, he could have took the timeout, and we could have had a handful more plays we could have ran. And then obviously bad clock management by Will Howard with 6 seconds left. Instead of throwing the ball out of balance and making one heave-ho for the end zone or kicking an extremely large, long field goal, I would imagine they would have, decided to throw a Hail Mary anyways. He decided to run the ball. He was just trying to get a few extra yards. I can't blame the guy for doing that, but the fact that you're a veteran QB and you've played this long in college, you can't be making mistakes like that. I told you guys on this show, and I told you and Saf just in general through our messages, that was the one thing that I was worried with about Will Howard. He played in some big games at Kansas State, but in my eyes, it was nothing like this, right? You're on a bigger stage against bigger teams and a bigger spotlight, and he absolutely fumbled the bag when we needed him the most. It's not just about getting a few extra yards. It's about keeping your team alive to the very last second, which he did not do right there. That was bad, awful clock management. I would have rather took a chance at a Hail Mary in the end zone than what he decided to do there. But on the other note, our defense was atrocious. This is a defense that has played well all year long. We play good every single year, every game. And in our biggest game, we literally folded like a lawn chair. We couldn't stop the rush. The running back had like 21 or 24 carries for like 120, 130 yards and a touchdown. We were getting smacked on man defense, man coverage. Anytime we played man coverage, we literally got burned every time. Every time I saw us playing man coverage, someone got burnt bad, like wide open. Number 7, whoever that is for Oregon, anytime we played man coverage on him, and we kept doing it all game long, anytime we played man coverage, he literally dusted whoever was covering him, and it wasn't even close. And then the other thing I couldn't get over with, I know I'm ranting, the other thing I couldn't get over with is the middle of the field was open every play on offense for Oregon. Literally, you would think we would do something to stop that, but the middle of the field was open every time. They ran so many slant routes, I couldn't even think straight. And it was a catch every time, not for 5 yards, not for 6 yards. We're talking like 10 to 15 yards every catch in the middle of the field. It was literally depressing to watch. We 100% deserved to lose that game with how bad our offense played, trying to manage anything. Ryan Day was atrocious coaching. He should have saved the 15 seconds that he blew off the clock. I know he thinks he's immortal, but he's absolutely not. And our defense was by far the biggest problem overall throughout the whole day because we were getting thrown around like a rag doll by Oregon, which is a team that basically just ran the same plays every down. They just ran the same play. It was literally handoff, middle of the field for 15 yards. We'll run it again. Oh, look, Ohio State's playing man coverage. Let's throw it to number 7. He's going to burn you guys for 50 yards and a touchdown. That's literally what they did all game long. So, I don't know. It was hard to watch. It was a 1-point game, but I don't think Oregon was better than us. I honestly don't think Oregon was the better football team. I 100% don't believe that. I think Ohio State, if our defense played like it usually did, I think we have no problem beating Oregon. I really don't. Our defense couldn't do anything. So credit to Oregon for winning. We're lucky we only got dropped 2 spots. I mean, we're lucky Oregon was ranked number 3 because if they were ranked 7 or 8, with how much they hate Ohio State, we would have got dropped far. So we're lucky we only got dropped to number 4, but it also puts us in a really tough spot because now we've lost a game. All right, I understand what's the number 3, but if we lose another one, we're gonna be in a really bad spot, and we still have to play a team like Penn State and a team like Michigan. I'm not saying we're gonna lose to those guys, but I'm not saying that we couldn't lose to those guys. So my rant's over with, but that's basically my breakdown of the whole game. They torched us. Any play they did, they torched us. There was no question about it.
I was about to say we're running through some stats here real quick. Other than that, right there towards the end of the game, Will Howard had a decent day, 28 to 35, 326 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. These Ohio State receivers came out, did their thing once again. Jeremiah Smith, 9 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. Egbuka, 10 catches, 93 yards, a touchdown. I mean, Travion Henderson, that running back duo, over 100 yards combined. Quinshon Judkins gave up a crucial fumble there, and I think they said he had fumbled. It was his first fumble, and I think what was it? His first one this season, but dating back to I think sometime last year.
Yeah,
it was several games. They said it was his first fumble. On the other side of that ball, on the other side for Oregon, Dillon Gabriel, 23 of 34, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jordan James, a running back you was talking about, 23 carries, 115 yards, 1 touchdown. Dillon Gabriel did also rush the ball 4 times for 32 yards and a touchdown. Evan Stewart, number 7, the guy you were talking about, 7 catches, 149 yards and a touchdown. Tez Johnson, 7 catches, 75 yards and a touchdown. Oregon did have one of their receivers ejected for unsportsmanlike conduct and spitting on an Ohio State player. So, that was one of the key guys that the big reason Evan Stewart had to step up is because they lost one of their other receivers. At the end of the day, great game. Like you said, it's not over for Ohio State. They've still got, a good shot. They just got to be careful throughout the rest of the season, especially when it comes to that rivalry Michigan game. Regardless of how bad Michigan is, a rivalry game, kind of, you throw the records out the window, it doesn't matter. So, if they were to lose another game, you still got potentially, if they can make it to the conference championship and win the conference champion bid, that's an option. But other than that, I think that they still have a pretty good shot.
Yeah, I think they do too. It was just it was a really bad day by our offense, and I know Will Howard had a good day, but still, you can't make crucial mistakes like that at the end of the game. I understand you want to get a couple yards, try to get that field goal so you can try to possibly win the game. I get that, but you also have to look at the bigger picture. I mean, 6 seconds left with how much time you wasted in the pocket. I mean, realistically, that it just wasn't going to happen. But yeah, our defense. If we want to win these next couple big games that we have on the schedule, our defense is going to have to play significantly better. To get torched by the same plays all game long, by the same players all game long, that is just not going to work. Because they ran all over us, and on top of that, we literally couldn't stop the pass game if our lives depended on it. So, like you said, you got to throw the records out the book whenever you get to those. So it'll be interesting to see if how the games go against Penn State and Michigan. Other than that, I think those are the 2 hardest games in our schedule. But still, anything can happen. We just got to be very careful with how we manage the games the rest of our season.
Yeah, 100%. A couple other games to highlight before we move on to Week 8. Illinois gets the overtime win over Purdue, 50-49. Purdue drops to 1-5 on the season. Illinois quarterback Luke Altmaier, 20 of 34, 379 yards and 3 touchdowns to lead them to the win. They got a big game this week. Kansas State gets the win over Colorado. We talked about Travis Hunter exited that game with an injury. Kansas State pulls off the win 31-28. Shadur Sanders, 34 of 40 for 388 yards and 3 touchdowns in a losing effort. The other big surprise, Alabama barely beats South Carolina 27-25 in a game that they probably should have lost that game. Got outplayed again at home. And, I will agree with you. We talked about this a little bit before we got on here. There's probably a little bit of SEC bias in just who Alabama is, why they're not dropping, still in the top 10, that one loss. But you lose a game to Vanderbilt, and then you have another close game where you do not look good at all against South Carolina, and you're still top 10. I mean, I get it that a win's a win, but when you have some of these other teams below you getting better wins and not struggling to win the games that you should, little questionable there.
Yeah, a couple things. you said the Illinois-Purdue game. That was Illinois' first home win against Purdue. This is October 30th, 2010. They haven't beat them at home in 14 years. So that's pretty wild. The Colorado game, Shadur Sanders, another freaking terrific game throwing the football. But he was, I'm going to say my favorite quote from that game. The announcer said, Kansas State's defensive line was up in Shadur's chest like bronchitis. That's literally what he said on air. That's 100% true. The man had 9 rushes for negative 50 yards. And that doesn't tell you how much he was pressured all game long. Number 3, yes, Alabama. I hate Alabama. I hate them so much. And I can't believe that they're only ranked number 7 with how they just performed after losing to Vanderbilt. Literally losing to Vandy, dropping to 7. If South Carolina wasn't such a poo-poo team that you would have lost to them, and the fact that you got lucky because they couldn't convert on a 2-point conversion, that's the only reason why you did not lose that game. Because I promise you, with how the momentum was shifting, if it would have went into overtime, you were going to lose that game. 100%.
Well, I mean, even you look at it, South Carolina didn't convert on the 2-point conversion, but then they recover the onside kick and throw a pick trying to push the ball down the field. I mean, like you said, if South Carolina was a little bit better team, you're probably looking at an Alabama team that has 2 losses now.
Yeah, and then they would still find some way to keep them in the college playoffs. What was it, a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago? Alabama had 2 losses, and they still put them in the top 4. They still dropped them a little bit, but it was close enough to allow them to work themselves back up to be in the top 4 when there's only 4 spots. So, yeah, I mean, 100% bias when you have Georgia and Alabama there, because Georgia at number 5 right now with how they've been playing since they lost to Alabama, I don't think they deserve to be number 5. I honestly don't think they deserve to be number 5. But I 100% agree with you. There is some SEC bias, because SEC is their big time, right? That is their big time football. So, but something's got to give. Whenever these teams are barely beating these really bad teams, I mean, you can't keep keeping them up in the top 7. I mean, that's not fair to some of these other teams out there.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it shakes out towards the end of the year. And I mean, each week after week, there's going to be games that kind of hold some playoff contention and some keys there. And as we kind of jump over to our Week 8 preview, I don't know about you, Dillon, but our pick'em is not going so hot for me. I'm sub 500 right now at 34-35.
Yeah, I'm also 34-35. I said it. I said it a couple times over the year. I found out one thing I'm not very good at, and that's not picking college football games consistently. So it seems like every time I don't pick a team, they win, and then when I finally do pick them, they lose. So yeah, I don't know. It's been. I mean, we talked about it before we even started the show. It's been a very weird year. A lot of good teams. I mean, I would almost say this is the weirdest year in college football that we've had in a long time, because a lot of these good teams are making crucial mistakes that we don't ever see, or they just play really bad football consistently a couple games in a row, which we're not accustomed to seeing. I mean, look at Georgia. Look at what we were saying about these guys before we even started college football season. I mean, we were saying like these guys are going to be unstoppable, the best team in college football, like not going to be touched. And I mean, I understand their one loss was to Alabama, but they just have not been playing well all year long, realistically. And we're not accustomed to seeing that. We've been accustomed to seeing a Georgia football team the last handful of years just go in and plow everybody down. Same thing with Alabama. They're just not playing well. Ohio State, making crucial mistakes. Boise State in the top 15, Iowa State in the top 10, Army and Navy ranked and undefeated. So, I mean, it's been a really weird year for college football. One of the weirdest, I think, in recent years.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that you reminded me of there, but with Army and Navy, if they keep having the success, so they play at the end of the year after all the conference games and everything, or the conference championships. Well, they said this year they're on the trajectory that Army and Navy could play each other 2 weeks in a row, with one of them being in their conference championship game, and then the following week in their traditional Army-Navy game.
Oh my
That
God.
would be wild.
Especially if they're both undefeated. I mean, especially that first game. I mean, God dang, dude. I mean, because Army, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched any of their games, but I've watched them the replays, and Army is rolling. I mean, literally, they're rolling the teams they're playing. I don't know. I've never thought in my life I would see Army and Navy ranked in the top 25. I never thought I'd see Iowa State ranked number 9 being in the top 10. I never thought I'd see a team lose to NIU, embarrassed at home, and crawl their way back to what is a playoff spot right now. So yeah, I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but in my eyes, this is 100% the weirdest year in college football I think I have ever seen in the last handful of years. It's been basically anything is unpredictable in my eyes because it's just been crazy.
Yeah, I agree. They said that this year's football season is doing its best impression of the 2007 football season, where we had similar type of craziness going on. But we'll go ahead and jump into our Week 8 pick'ems and this Week 8 preview. First one up here on the docket, Miami heads to Louisville, Kentucky to take on the 4-2 Louisville Cardinals. Miami is favored by 4 in this game. They are coming off a bye week where before that they had 2 close games that were decided late into the game, with barely beating Virginia Tech and then that questionable call versus Cal 2 weeks ago. You have Louisville coming off a win over Virginia and then 2 previous losses to Notre Dame and SMU. A battle of 2 of the ACC's best quarterbacks so far this season. Cam Ward, 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Show for Louisville, 1,674 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
Hey, listen, Miami's winning, barely, but they're winning. And they've shown a lot of gut, especially when you're losing the Cal. Actually, I take it back. Whenever you're getting spanked 35-10, I mean, you're getting absolutely obliterated. And you show that much heart to basically allow 3 points and score 29 straight to come back and win. Like I said, some of these games, the last 2 especially, they're barely winning, but they're winning. They're finding ways to win. And like I always say, a win's a win no matter what, whether it's by 1 point or by 100, it doesn't matter. So I like Miami. Cam Ward's doing his thing. I'm surprised he's not talked about more in the Heisman right now, especially with having 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. But it is what it is. But I think Miami's overall the better team, and I think they're going to go out and do their thing again, whether it's by 1 point or they blow Louisville out. I think they get the win.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to have to follow you up there. I think Miami does. They are the better overall team in this game. It's going to be interesting to see because I know Louisville was a dark horse in the ACC as well. You know, they've surprised some people, but they do have those losses to Notre Dame and SMU. It is home field for them. We'll see what Miami does. You know, they 2 back-to-back close games. Do they come out and kind of, you know, they're ranked number 6. Do they come out and just, you know, get the win handily here, or is it another close game that could be decided in the fourth quarter? But I'm right there with you. I take Miami in this one. Up next, you have Nebraska and the number 16 undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. We're not talking college basketball. We are talking college football. And Nebraska is headed to Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana is favored by 5 in this game, and they are already bowl eligible, being 6-0 so far on the season. You know, they have wins over Northwestern, Maryland, UCLA, whereas you have Nebraska getting wins over Rutgers, Purdue, that loss in overtime to Illinois, and that win early in the season over Colorado. You got Dylan Raiola, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the season. Rourke for Indiana, 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, taking care of the ball. What do you think?
I think I'm gonna go against what I usually go here. I think I'm gonna go with Nebraska to win. I know they're going down to Indiana. I think the quarterback play, even though he has 1,700 yards compared to his 1,300, he has more touchdown passes. I do think Raiola is a better quarterback, and I think they've played a tougher select amount of teams. And if it wasn't for his offensive line blowing it for him in overtime against Illinois, I mean, they could have easily won that game against Illinois. I mean, he was sacked like 3 times out of the 4 plays that they had on that last drive in overtime. So it could have been a different game, if the offensive line could have stopped Illinois' defense. But I think Nebraska goes down because of how crazy it's been. And I know Indiana's ranked. That's weird to say. I'm not convinced that they're a great football team. So I'm gonna pick an upset here. I'm gonna take Nebraska to go down to Indiana and walk away with the win.
Yeah, I'm gonna be on the other side of that. I'm gonna take Indiana to continue the winning streak that they are on. I think it's been a surprise by far this season, and maybe they're actually building something there. Let me ask you, do you know who Indiana's head coach is?
Do I know? I'd be lying to you if I said I did.
Kurt Kignetti. He is the coach that he made that jump to Indiana from leading JMU to several good football seasons and getting them to that next level in college football. So a winning coach there, taking it to the next level at Indiana. It should be another good game for week 8 as we continue here. Team that we just talked about upsetting earlier in the week over Utah. You have Arizona State headed to Cincinnati, Ohio to take on the Bearcats. You have Cincinnati favored in this one by 2.5. You have Arizona State coming in at 5-1, Cincinnati at 4-2. The big thing for me, you look at Cincinnati's quarterback, 1,700 yards, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, take care of the ball. But I'm looking at the running back for Arizona State, Scatabo, on the season, 133 carries, 773 yards, and 8 touchdowns. It's been impressive to see what he's done on the ground. Your thoughts on this game?
Give me Arizona State. They're riding high after that win. They played quality teams too. They just they beat Mississippi State, who just put up a good fight against Georgia. They beat Texas State. They lost to Texas Tech barely, but then they also have wins against Kansas, who was ranked sometime this year, and Utah, who I have said is a good team. Inconsistent, but they are a good team. So give me ASU to win this game. I think they're probably feeling good. 2 straight wins over two good teams, and they're probably riding high. So I'm gonna take ASU for the win here.
I'm right there with you. You look at these 2 teams' schedules here. Both of them have losses to Texas Tech. Both of them being super close losses. Arizona losing 30-22. Cincinnati losing 44-41. Like you though, I like how Arizona State's playing right now. They're riding pretty high, and I think they continue to roll here and get the win over the Cincinnati Bearcats. As we continue here, you have the Louisiana Raging Cajuns and the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers in South Carolina on the road for Louisiana. They're favored by 3.5 in this game. Their quarterback, Woolridge, 1,400 yards on the season, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Quarterback, Vasco, for Coastal Carolina, 1,185 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I'm like you. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I've watched a lot of these 2 teams play this year. You have Louisiana that's 5-1, Coastal Carolina at 4-2. So,
Yeah. Listen, I'd be lying to you guys. I watch college football, but I don't watch every single game of college football. Okay, there are games that you watch, and there are games that you just don't watch, and these are games that I don't watch. But listen, I like the name, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. So I'm gonna go with the Raging Cajuns here.
I was about to say, I'm going to follow suit there. I like how their quarterback's taking care of the ball 12-4 on that touchdown to interception ratio, and they're getting things done. So I'm going to take Louisiana as well. As we continue, a game that I think could be pretty interesting for Week 8. You have Alabama headed to Neyland Stadium in Knoxville to take on Tennessee, a team that they got the win last week over one of their more, you can call it one of their rival games against Florida. Alabama coming off that close win against South Carolina, two teams that have been pretty good this year up until these past couple of weeks. Both of them losing 2 weeks ago, both of them coming off close wins this past week. This is a big game for both of these teams. Alabama comes in the 2.5-point favorite. I honestly, this could be one of the better matchups to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. And like you said, I'm gonna reiterate what you just said. It's a big game for both teams. This could basically be push come to shove. This would basically be: are you in the college playoffs or are you not? Both teams have one loss. I would say Tennessee's loss is a little more respectable since they lost to Arkansas, but still, both teams are unranked, so that's not good losses to have. Doesn't matter if a team is better than what they show to be. And you both have one loss this early in the season, so this really could be: do you have a playoff spot or not? I mean, this really could be it. Both teams are coming off not playing very well this last week, but listen, as much as I hate them, I'm going to pick Alabama here. Jalen Milroe is probably still top 3 for the Heisman. The kid's incredible. And I don't know what it is about Alabama, but when push comes to shove and they're forced in a spot, they usually find a way to win big games. I'm not saying always, but usually they do. They usually find a way to win big games. And Tennessee had, they just had that detrimental loss to the linebacker on the defense. They're banged up a little bit. They have some injuries. I think Alabama's probably going to find a way to exploit that. And I don't know if necessarily Nico, Tennessee's QB, I don't know if he's really had the experience of playing in a game like this against a tough Alabama defense. So give me Alabama to have a rough win here. I think it's going to be a rough game, but I'm going to pick Alabama to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to follow suit there. I think Alabama gets the win here just because you've got a more experienced quarterback with Jalen Milroe compared to a struggling Nico. We saw him since Tennessee, their 2 SEC games this year. They've really struggled compared to what they were doing earlier in the season. You look at, they beat NC State 51-10, Kent State 71-0. You enter SEC play 25-15 over Oklahoma. You only put up 25 points after averaging, well over 50 points a game. You put up 14 against Arkansas and then only 23 against Florida. This high-flying Heupel offense has really been slowed down this season since they entered conference play. And I think that's probably as talented as Nico is, there's going to be growing pains as he's a redshirt freshman, hasn't played a ton, and so he's having to figure it out as he goes. And I don't think, like you said, when push comes to shove, this Alabama team is going to find a way to win. We haven't seen it consistently enough from this Tennessee team. And I think that's why Alabama does go on the road and get the win here in Knoxville over Tennessee. We'll move on. Michigan, your favorite team to talk about here,
Yeesh.
headed to Illinois to take on the Fighting Illini, ranked 22, 5-1 on the season, 2-1 in the conference play. Michigan is favored by 1 point in this game. Surprisingly, I don't know how. I know how you feel about this game, but I really think Illinois, I think they probably keep it rolling here. Altmaier's been playing well this season, 1,400 yards through the air, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception, something that I don't think Michigan can grasp the concept of throwing the ball. I mean, you have Warren is their leading passer, and he isn't even the starting quarterback right now. So, and he has 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions on the season. You have that rushing attack for Michigan, but on the road, I'm taking Illinois in this game.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it too much because Michigan's awful. They're a terrible team. They're not very good at all. I don't know how they're still ranked. I hate every part of them, but they're not a good football team. And I think Illinois goes in, and I think Altmaier probably lights them up. The defense is struggling now. It's not just the offense. And all I can tell you is that when Illinois scores points, which they're going to do, they're going to score. I understand your defense may be able to make some stops, but your offense, right, guys? You guys understand, you got to play offense, right? Your offense is going to have to find a way to score, all right? And since you guys can't throw the ball and your leading passer has 6 interceptions to 2 touchdowns and he's your third string now, all right, I would say you guys probably are not going to score a whole lot. So if your defense cannot play any sort of defense, Illinois is going to light you up because he is taking care of the ball and he's throwing a lot of touchdowns in the process. So, yeah, I think Illinois walks in. I think it's an easy win for Illinois. I 100% think it. And I take pride in saying that. I think it's an easy win for Illinois.
Yeah, I agree there. We'll jump over to the next game. Texas Tech taking on Baylor in Jones A&T Stadium in Lubbock. Texas Tech, I think, gets it done here. This is a struggling Baylor team that's 2-4 on the season. 3 straight losses with, dating back to they lose to Colorado 38-31. Baylor loses to Colorado 38-31 in overtime. BYU 34-28 and Iowa State 43-21, where you have Texas Tech coming off 4 straight wins. North Texas, Arizona State, Cincinnati, and Arizona, that team that we were talking about a few weeks ago that is a sneaky team that you have to watch out for. Morton taking care of the ball for Texas Tech. We just talked about it with Altmaier for Illinois. Morton on the season, 1,640 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Really good, game management there. Robertson on the other side for Baylor, 1,045 yards on the season, 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, 3-to-1 ratio there. I think Texas Tech comes in here at home and gets it done.
Yep, I agree with you. I think Texas Tech gets it done. Baylor is struggling. Texas Tech isn't. Texas Tech's rolling. I think they keep it rolling.
Yeah. Up next, another interesting game on the docket here. LSU travels to Fayetteville for another night game. We know the results in the last night game at Fayetteville. Arkansas gets the win over Tennessee. This is one of those games like we talked about, rivalry games. To me, this is a true rivalry game for Arkansas, even though we have our forced rivalry with Missouri at the end of the season. This is one of those games where you throw the records out of the book. As bad as Arkansas was last year, we played LSU to 3 points. I think if you look at the past 3 matchups of this game, it's all been decided by 3 points the previous 3 seasons. And, if Arkansas can continue its momentum here from that win 2 weeks ago, the big question mark for Arkansas you got to look at is Taylor Green going to be healthy enough to play after taking that big hit 2 weeks ago? Press conference today, coach says he is feeling pretty confident he's going to play. I mean, we'll know more on Wednesday as practice reports and injury reports are released per a new thing the SEC is doing that will kind of lists guys that will play probable, similar to the way the NFL does their, injury reports. I think this has the chance to be another, great game. Arkansas's defense has been on fire this season. As we talked about LSU earlier, they rely heavily on the passing game. If we can shut the run game down, our secondary can, do what they've been doing over the past few weeks and playing at that high level. I think Arkansas has the chance to come out with another big win at home here in Fayetteville. after dark. Your thoughts on the game, Dylan?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. Like you said, you got to throw the records out of the book. This is an Arkansas team that technically, if they didn't blow themselves in the foot and out of the water, they would be 6-0 right now. I mean, technically, they made a lot of mistakes in those two losses, especially the one that hurts the most, Oklahoma State. I mean, that should have been an easy win. You guys basically led in every category in the game and still found a way to shoot yourself in the foot and lose, which does not happen very often to teams that lead in every category in a football game and still lose. But Green, I mean, he's taking care of the football a little bit. I mean, he has 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, but he is finding ways to score. He's using his legs very well too. He's a dual threat QB, so he looks good on that end. I think as long as he takes care of the ball and your guys' defense can keep playing the way it's playing, I think you guys definitely could win this game. LSU is playing really good too. That is coming off a big win against Ole Miss. But listen, Ole Miss, LSU is one of those teams that is very good, but they're also very inconsistent, especially when they find their way to be in the top 10. It seems like they catch a lot of momentum. Seems like they've been that way since Joe Burrow left there. They get really good, and then they mess up, and then they get really good, and then they mess up, and then it's too late for them to make any progress. So I'm going to have faith in Green. I'm going to have faith in his legs. I'm going to have faith that he can take care of the ball. And I'm going to have faith in your guys' defense is going to continue playing the way that it's been playing. And I'm going to have faith that your team is going to keep playing like a 6-0 team like they should be. And I'm going to take Arkansas to win a really rough game here. I think it's going to be down to the wire. But I'm going to pick Arkansas to come out with the win here and have an upset again against the top 10 team.
It's what we like to hear. I think, like you said, it's going to be another tough game. I think it's like Coach says, the key here is going to be, can Arkansas play a clean game like it did against Tennessee? Don't have any turnovers. Take care of the ball. And like you said, that defense can continue to play on a high level like they have. I think there's a chance here. So it's going to be another interesting Saturday night in Fayetteville with LSU coming to town in the battle for the Golden Boot. It should be another good one. I'm, of course, taking Arkansas on this one. It should be another fun matchup. As we continue here, not as much as what we thought prior to the season, but arguably one of the probably still biggest games in college football this season. You have Georgia headed to Austin to take on Texas. Texas, the 3.5-point favorite in this game at home. This is going to be your game day game of the week, kicking off at 6:30. Georgia's got a lot to prove here. They're going to have to step up and up their level of play from the previous 2 weeks if they want to have any chance at slowing down or even stopping this Texas team that seems like they're clicking on all cylinders at the moment.
Yeah, listen, Georgia's been struggling a little bit. I mean, they're still winning. A win's a win. Like I said earlier, it doesn't matter if it's by 1 or by 50 or whatever. I don't know. I think it's going to be a really good game. I really do. Part of me wants to pick Georgia because of who they are. They always play really well in tough games. I mean, they were getting absolutely obliterated by Alabama and found a way to score 34 points straight to make that game a game when it definitely shouldn't have been. But listen, until I'm convinced otherwise that Texas isn't better than every football team right now, I'm going to have to stick with Texas. Quinn Ewers, I know he had a little bit of a rough game, but he's rusty. He had a really bad abdominal injury. We all know that. But the fact that he came in and still looked that good after suffering an injury like that, I know he's a little rusty, but still, he still played well, in a big game. I mean, even though they smoked him, that's still a big game. I think it's probably an overtime game, probably a one-score game. It probably goes down to the wire, probably goes to overtime, if not two. But I think Texas, I can't believe I'm saying this compared to what the beginning of the year was. I think Texas is just a better football team. I really do. I think they're just a better football team defensively and offensively right now. So I'm going to take Texas to get the win here. It's probably going to be a tough win. It's going to be a little rough, but it's at home, right? So I until I get proved otherwise, I don't see how I gotta take Texas. I gotta take Texas to win this game.
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say, I'm right there with you. I'm taking Texas in this one. It's kind of like we said about Georgia a few weeks ago. In all the matchups, I'm picking them until they get beat, and somebody proves to me they can take down Georgia. And Alabama did that a few weeks ago, and it seems to have, I don't know, messed with their mindset a little bit that they were able to, even if you look back to that Kentucky game where they really struggled but got the win, and then you continue this, and I don't know. I mean, Texas looks like the real deal on both sides of the ball. And I'm like you there. I think until somebody can come in and beat Texas, that it's going to be them sitting at the top of the college football world for the foreseeable future.
Yep, I 100% agree.
Our final matchup in the Pick'em this week, you have Kansas State coming off that big win against Colorado, headed to Morgantown, West Virginia. Pat McAfee's alma mater, taking on the 3-3 West Virginia Mountaineers. Kansas State favored by 2.5 in this game. Avery Johnson has been, fantastic for this Kansas State this year. 1,100 yards on the season, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But really where he can change the game, kind of like we were talking about Green earlier for Arkansas, his rushing ability, kind of his legs changes the game for, this team here. If you look at his stats on the season, as far as he's got 1,100 yards passing, but if you look at his rushing totals on the season, he's got 306 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. So he's able to do it on the ground as well. And, I think that's probably a game changer for this Kansas State team.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kansas State to win here, just based on the upside, like you just said, of how well I know they can play. But don't put West Virginia down. I mean, they're 3-3, but 2 of their losses are to 2 ranked teams, Pitt and Iowa State. So Pitt, they lost by 4 points. Iowa State, who they just lost to, they lost by 12. They beat Oklahoma State, and they've beat Kansas. So they play the tough teams really well. So I expect this to probably be a pretty good game. But I think, like you said, just based on the upside that I know that KSU has, I think I'm gonna have to stick with that. If they can play on all fronts like they did against Colorado, I know they almost lost, but they played pretty well that game. If they can play like that against West Virginia, they probably roll them. So I'm just gonna take KSU.
Yeah, I agree there. I'm taking Kansas State as well. Before we get out of here, a few other games to highlight. BYU taking on Oklahoma State in Provo, Utah. This is a team that Oklahoma State that we thought before the season had the chance to, be contenders for the Big 12 again. You have BYU sitting nice and pretty at number 13, 6-0, 3-0 in Big 12 play. This is a big time matchup. BYU favored by 9.5 in this game. It'll be interesting to see what Oklahoma State does as they try to right the ship at sitting at 3-3, 0-3 in the Big 12. Ollie Gordon not having a fantastic season this year, 101 carries, 384 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Not great. You look at Alan Bowman, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, really struggling. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think BYU probably gets the win here and continues to look like the team that might surprise everybody and contend for the Big 12.
Yeah, I'm going to take BYU. Oklahoma State's been struggling. It seems like ever since they beat Arkansas. And they got pretty shaken up in that game. Arkansas really handed it to them. It seems like they've been really struggling ever since that game to really find themselves again. I mean, realistically, I know they still won that game, but it just seems like maybe their confidence got shaken up. Like, we thought we're going to go in and smack these guys, and then, they really took it to us. So they have not been the same team, and BYU has been on fire, and they're rolling right now. So I don't see any reason why I'd pick against them.
Exactly. The 23rd ranked Army Black Knights are taking on East Carolina in West Point. I think they get the win here and move to 7-0 on the season. This could be, very interesting for the American Conference. This is a conference game for these two teams, 3-3, East Carolina, 6-0, Army. I think Army gets the win here. I'm sure you probably agree with that.
Yeah, I think Army gets the win here. I mean, it's just surprising what they're undefeated. They're 6-0. They just beat UAB. Actually, I won't even say they beat them. They absolutely torched them. Their running back had 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, they're moving and grooving. So, yeah,
that's it. Yeah. As you continue, number 25 Navy looks to take on Charlotte. That's 3-3. Horvath for Navy seems to be the do-it-all guy for them. Leads them in passing yards, 771 yards through the air, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. But is also their leading rusher with 66 carries for 565 yards and 10 touchdowns on the year. I think Navy continues to roll here and move both these teams. You'll have a 7-0 and Army team, 6-0 Navy team. Both these teams undefeated in conference play. At this point now, I'm rooting for that matchup in the conference championship game to see an Army-Navy matchup.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe we're even saying that. Navy and Army both ranked in the top 25. That's how weird this college football season is. Army and Navy.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, both ranked. Army and Navy are ranked. Boise State is ranked. Iowa State in the top 10. I mean, Pittsburgh is ranked. I mean, there are teams that are ranked that I never thought would be ranked. I mean, BYU is torching teams. Texas A&M, who we said multiple times they're not a very good team, and they caught fire. Now they're 15th. Indiana, like you said, they're ranked. Kansas State, who's been like mid, they're ranked. SMU, they're ranked. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a crazy, yeah. That's where we're at. That is where we're at.
I agree. It's going to be another great weekend of college football. You have even SMU, their first season in the ACC, sitting at 2-0, taking on Stanford this week, headed to Stanford, California. They're 5-1 on the season. Stanford not having the best year, 2-4. SMU probably gets the win there. But another good weekend of great games and matchups. There's going to be a good one in Austin between Georgia, Texas. There's going to be a great one in Knoxville, Tennessee between Alabama and Tennessee. And I can't wait for the one in Fayetteville with LSU coming to town. What another great weekend to watch college football. Anything else from you, Dillon, before we decide to get out of here?
Nope, I got nothing.
And with that, we'll get out of here. We'll be watching, just like you guys, to see what other craziness and upsets happen in what's already been a crazy football season this year. And we'll be right back here next Monday to talk about it and recap it.